Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We begin in the name of God, most compassionate and ever merciful. Greetings of peace to all of you, and welcome to the second round of these Catholic-Shi'a Dialogues hosted by the Ansari Institute for Global Engagement with Religion, part of the Keough School of Global Affairs at the University of Notre Dame. I'm Mahan Mirza, the Executive Director of the Ansari Institute, and I'm delighted to be here with this distinguished international panel moderated by two of our esteemed faculty fellows and affiliates, Dr. Gabriel Said Reynolds, who's the Jerome J. Crowley and Rosaline G. Crowley Professor of Theology, and Dr. Azra Banafsheh Keinoush, who is leading the implementation of these dialogues and is also a visiting scholar with our Kroc Institute for International Peace Studies. The topic for today's dialogue is gender, which we hope to cover through a range of lenses: dignity and rights, scripture and tradition, society and institutions. You may view our first dialogue in this series, which we call the Dialogue on Dialogues, on our website, and stay tuned for the third and final dialogue in the series coming up on the topic of geopolitics. So before handing it over to our moderators, I'd like to thank Rebecca Go and Tim Checkley for helping us to organize these dialogues at the Ansari Institute and the Keough School at Notre Dame. And with that, let me turn it over to Banafsheh and Gabriel to lead today's session. And thank you all for being here.
Well, thank you, Dr. Mirza. I'm trying to turn the video on. If you can't see me, that's all right. I want to also thank everyone for being here with us today. I am very grateful for the time you've given us. And I'm very excited that the topic of today's dialogue is on gender, just days after International Women's Day. I'm also very appreciative of the guests who have accepted our invitation to speak here today and to be with us. Especially grateful to our guests from Iran who accepted our invitation, Dr. Mahia Safariniya from Imam Sadiq University, and Dr. Hamideh Amir Yazdani, who I hope will be joining us shortly from the University of Religions and Denominations from Qom, Iran. Also welcome to Dr. Cortes Rodriguez and to Sister Anne Astel. We're very grateful for your time. Now, we do have an audience who's also keen to participate in this dialogue series. And with that in mind, I'd like to ask our speakers to please basically concentrate on the questions that we raise, to make comments, to give us your viewpoints, but to please perhaps take no more than 5 minutes to share those ideas with us so that we can go through our list of questions. Now, one of the first questions that we have shared with you is an attempt to approach the topic of gender from a theoretical as well as a theological perspective, based on the urging of my colleague, Dr. Gabriel Reynolds. And the question is, what are the consequences in terms of religious practice and ethics of the common Islamic and Christian conviction that God gives humans, both men and women, of all creatures, a particular dignity? In other words, as humans, whether man or woman, we all are dignified by God. And so what does that mean in practice and ethics in your faiths? And who are some of the thinkers in your tradition who developed this idea? I'd like to ask Dr. Safariniya to please give us an answer, and then invite our other speakers to join in. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Keinoush. Salamun alaikum. Peace be upon you. I would like to begin with a poem by great Iranian poet and mystic who says, the sky envies the earth where for a moment or two a few friends sit together for the sake of God. I'm delighted that in the holy month of Ramadan, on the anniversary of the passing of one of the great women of Islam, the wife of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, I have the opportunity and honor to participate in this interfaith gathering. I sincerely thank the esteemed organizers of this dialogue and commend them for their effort. God bless you. Concerning your question, I should clarify some points. First, I should mention that sacred texts in any religion are usually interpreted according to a methodology accepted by the scholars of that faith. The sacred text for all Muslims is Holy Quran. Whenever a topic is to be analyzed from a religious perspective, the primary reference for Islamic scholars is the Quran. Alongside the Holy Quran, there are other sources that are considered essential for understanding religion, known as the sources of ijtihad, independent reasoning. In Shia Islam, the sources of religious understanding include the Holy Quran, the Sunnah of the Prophet, consensus of religious scholars, and reason. The key term dignity in our sacred text, the Holy Quran, is the Arabic word karama. The term karama appears in multiple places throughout the Quran, but I will focus on the primary verse that serves as the foundation for the concept of intrinsic dignity. A specific reference to dignity is found in Surah Al-Isra, where the Quran explicitly states, "Indeed, we have honored the children of Adam." This verse describes human beings as superior to many other creatures, possessing the highest level of dignity and endowed with purity and goodness. The verse does not specify that dignity is granted only to Muslims. It does not limit it to a specific group of Muslims. It does not specify it to men only or to women only. It states that all human beings have been granted dignity by God. In addition to this verse, Surah Al-Hujurat is also significant. It complements the understanding of intrinsic dignity and human equality while introducing a distinction in human status based on faith and righteous deeds. In this verse, God says, "Mankind, we have created you from a single pair of a male and a female and made you into nations and tribes so that you may know one another. The most honorable among you in the sight of God is the most righteous among you." The interpretation of a sacred text is carried out by scholars specializing in Quranic exegesis, which includes various interpretive methodologies. Over the past centuries, Muslim scholars have interpreted these two verses differently, leading to two broad perspectives. The first interpretation is the universalistic view, which is aligned with modern human rights. Scholars holding this view believe that intrinsic dignity applies to all humans, regardless of their beliefs or actions. They argue that this dignity is inalienable and cannot be taken away if a person commits wrongdoings. This perspective sees intrinsic dignity as the foundation of basic human rights, ensuring that every individual is entitled to respect and fundamental freedom. The second interpretation is conditional view. It's linked to righteousness and faith. This perspective interprets Quran as referring to potential dignity, meaning that dignity is an inherent capability that must be nurtured through righteous behavior. Proponents of this view argue that a person's true dignity is determined by piety and religious conduct. They claim that those who fail to cultivate this moral and spiritual excellence may lose their dignity and in extreme cases fall even below the status of animals. Clearly, The concept of human dignity, as recognized in international human rights law, aligns with the first interpretation, but conflicts with the second one. Muslim scholars who advocate for intrinsic dignity view it as a real, objective, and foundational concept with direct legal and ethical implications. They argue that humanity itself is defined by this dignity, and denying it would effectively strip a person of their very humanity. They do not reject the idea of acquired dignity. They acknowledge that individuals who excel in moral and ethical behavior naturally gain greater respect from others and higher spiritual status before God. Now, concerning the gender and dignity, Muslim scholars who support intrinsic dignity apply it equally to men and women, asserting that both genders are entitled to the same human rights. In contrast, the conditional dignity view can lead to discriminatory implication, affecting not only men's rights, but also women's dignity and rights. Currently, the universalistic interpretation of intrinsic dignity is gaining traction in both religious and secular circles, but it has not yet become the dominant view among Shia religious scholars. In recent years, some religious scholars have attempted to establish a general legal principle based on dignity. For example, the late Ayatollah Sani was one of the scholars who worked on this. Dr. Sayyid Mustafa Muhaqqaq Damas has authored several articles and writings arguing that dignity, and also many books are published in this regard. These efforts are still considered progressive, and reformists within Islamic seminaries, they have not yet become the mainstream view among the majority of religious scholars. Have I more time, or it's over?
I think that you've covered the discussion very comprehensively and given us very important information to think about and reflect on. I'm sure that during the Q&A, we'll be able to forward some questions to you about it. But if you allow me, I'd like to invite our other two speakers to please join in and maybe invite first Dr. Ann Astel to give us her thoughts about this question, and then next Dr. Rodriguez. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all for being here this morning. In the Christian tradition, that we always go back to the book of Genesis, which describes the 6 days of creation, and at each day the Lord is heard to say that it is good. But on the 6th day, things are very good. And the creation of the human beings, male and female, is said to be in the image and according to the likeness of God. Right? And so that is really the mark of human dignity, which raises it above all the other creatures. Even the sequence of days leads to the 6th day as a culmination of the week of creation, right? And so the creation, the human being was created very good, all right, according to image and likeness. Now, one of our commentators, a recent commentator, Edith Stein, who has been named a saint by the Catholic Church, in an essay on separate vocations of man and women, shares the thought that this story in Genesis tells us that male and female have a threefold mission. They have a shared responsibility to reflect the image and likeness of God in the world. They have a shared responsibility to increase and multiply, and they have a shared responsibility to be stewards of the rest of creation, to lead creation in a hymn of praise and thanks to God, the Creator. After the fall, all right, the sin of disobedience to God, theologians over time have said that the image of God remains in the soul, but that the likeness, the moral likeness to God, the righteousness, has been lost to various degrees. The theologians differ about that. So the process of sanctification, of redemption, of striving for virtue, aims at the regaining of the likeness to God, which allows the human being to reflect the full glory of God as image and likeness. Now, regarding to the shared threefold mission given to man and woman, it belongs to both kinds, but there's also a tradition that there's a kind of a specialization, that because it is such a full mission, so that we maybe have man and woman taking responsibility in different ways. So the mission for procreation it impinges upon the special mission of woman to be mother, and that includes giving birth, but also nourishing, educating in the home, and the mission of the father. It involves also providing for the family, right? So we have the special calling for work in the world. But both are called to holiness and mutual, they're helpmates to one another, right? And which means that the woman is perfectly capable as a full image of God, right, to work in the world, right, and to exercise her motherly, her nurturing, educational function in the world as well as in the home, and vice versa. The man also, should contribute as helpmate, in the family life and the education of children. I guess I would just maybe say one more thing about this notion of the hierarchy, the great chain of being at which the human being is sort of at a certain peak. In the writings of St. Augustine, for instance, he talks about how all the creatures bear testimony, and they will say, we did not make ourselves, right? So by the sheer fact of their existence, they praise God, all right? They point beyond themselves. But to the human being alone remains the capacity to pay attention to the rest of creation, to ask the questions, where did you come from, right? And to hear the answer, we did not make ourselves. And so it's the human being who has a kind of a priestly function to lead all of creation in the praise of God. We also find this in our scriptures, like in the book of Daniel, where the children in the furnace who are suffering persecution cry out, sun and moon, praise the Lord, right? Wind and rain, praise the Lord, that all of creation should praise the Lord. And because of this great dignity that belongs to the human being, in his being and in his mission, it is a very grave sin and forbidden expressly in the commandments to murder a human being. Abortion would not be permitted, the extinguishing of the unborn human life. Euthanasia would be forbidden. And there are certain restrictions on warfare also. And then there's on the other side of the ethical responsibility, the responsibility for the environment, right? That all the species that God has created should be maintained, right? Through the stewardship of the human. So I think that's about what I had to say.
Well, thank you very much, Sister Estelle. I really appreciate it. And as you were speaking, I'm struck by how much in common the Shia faith and the Catholic faiths have on the topics that you've touched on. May I invite Dr. Cortes Rodriguez to say a few words as well, please?
Thank you. And thank you, Sister Anne, for allowing me to talk a little bit about Jesus as well, because you stayed in what we call as the Old Testament, right, or the Hebrew Bible. And so you, because I was thinking, oh, how we are going to address the same question. But you let me talk a little bit about Jesus, because Jesus is one of the main characters of our main figure of our tradition. And he interacts with women in a special way.
Yes.
A way that is different to the time Jesus was living. So he somehow reinforced the dignity of women. And if we think about Genesis 1 as the mandatory or the most important text that we read when we think about creation, but also when we think about how we relate with God. How is our relationship as humans and God? In Christianity, we are made according to the image of God. So we have some divinity with us. We imagine God being similar as us, or in the image that we are. So when we think about creation of women, for a long time, it has been interpreted as something that came after the men. And it was a sort of interpretation that has been very much attached, I would say, to some traditional Christians. However, I think that now we have the idea of how after the whole creation, there is the need for someone equal to men. So God creates the man and creates the woman as a complement, as an equal, in terms of what Sister Anne was saying, in terms of responsibilities, but also in terms of dignity. And that has been something that we see in Jesus' practice when he speaks, for instance, to the Samaritan woman, who was a person who was not meant to be, first because of a woman. So men were not, I don't know if they were not allowed, but they were not expected to talk to women. And then he goes even to someone who is from another tradition, if you want to say, race, if you want to say. So it's very unexpected. Mary the Magdalene, that is how you call the Magdalena, yeah? And also is a woman that shouldn't be treated as such. And Jesus makes a difference. And of course, the Virgin Mary, that it's very important in our tradition, especially in South America. In South America, there is a great devotion to the images or appearances of the Virgin Mary. So the Marian influence in Christian lives, it's big, but the Virgin Mary has traditionally been portrayed as a silenced woman who probably was silenced, but she was portrayed, or the tradition showed, a woman that was kind, who was taking everything into the heart, was sorry, with the sun to everywhere. But we have somehow forgotten how the Virgin Mary was in key moments in the life of Jesus, in key moments in the life of the community. When the first miracle in the wedding of Cana wedding, yes, happens in the New Testament, as is narrated, the Virgin Mary is there, and is the one that pay attention to what is happening, to what people is needing. And then she goes probably like to whisper to Jesus, like, hey, we need more. Everything is getting over, so we need to have more wine in this case. So the Virgin Mary is there. Virgin Mary is during the whole time when, well, soon we are in this time we are expecting and preparing for Easter time. So during the Passion of Jesus, the Virgin Mary is the whole time there next to him. So we can think about a Virgin Mary that was more active than one we have recognized throughout the history of the church. So, and maybe that is and I will continue probably because I am seeing my phone and I reached my 5 minutes, but I will try to continue talking about this and how there are new voices thinking about women in the tradition of the church, but also in the Bible, how they have been, they still illuminate the way we are in the church and in society. So thank you. I leave my my talk.
Well, thank you very much to all three of our speakers for your reflections on this initial question. I'd like to ask my colleague, Dr. Reynolds, to please ask the next question.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Banafshe. It's very good to be with you. Blessings to you all in the holy month of Ramadan and in the season of Lent, as Dr. Cortez Rodriguez just mentioned. Christians prepare for the holiest days for them, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and Easter Sunday. And then to our Iranian friends, blessings to also in anticipation of the New Year celebrations. Dr. Safariniya, if I can again ask you to begin with our second question. We've begun, I think, in our initial reflections to address models, both people and stories that show the dignity of men and women. And we'd ask you to continue that. You mentioned, for example, I think in the Islamic calendar, today is the anniversary of the death of Khadija, the Prophet's first wife, and of course, the mother of Fatima. So in your faith tradition in Islam, and also in Shia understanding of Islam, including traditions around the Imams, the Prophet's family, what are examples of stories that show the dignity of men and women?
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. While I was listening to Sister Estelle and Dr. Rodriguez, I felt how close we are in reaction toward the women and gender issues within Islam and Christianity. I felt so close to each other. Concerning your question, I would like to focus solely on women to keep the discussion more precise. To review examples of respect for women's dignity in the Quran and the traditions of the Prophet of Islam and Shia Imams, we should consider that these examples can be categorized into several groups. And I want to mention 3 groups. First, honoring specific women in the first group. There are instances where certain women are mentioned with great respect and reverence. This can also carry a symbolic meaning, emphasizing that women are capable of attaining high human status. Such recognition serves as a reminder that not only should their dignity and rights not be violated, but successful women can also be role models for others. Second group is highlighting a woman's righteous actions in religious practices. In some religious rituals, a special emphasis is placed on the commendable actions of a particular woman. These cases can convey the message to all members of the religious community that women, like the examples mentioned in religious texts or history, can act in a way that, while preserving their dignity and honor, makes them role models for all people, not only women, for all people. And the third one is statements or actions by the prophet or imams in a specific context. These are instances where at a particular time and regarding a specific issue, the prophet or imams have spoken or acted in a way that is significant for understanding human dignity, especially that of women. These examples actually can serve as behavioral models for Muslims. These instances are primarily reported in hadith collections of both Shia and Sunni traditions. I will give examples for each of these three mentioned groups. For the first group, honoring specific women, Hazrat Maryam, Lady Mary, and Lady Asiya are significant and well-known figures recognized by all Abrahamic religions. The Quran describes Lady Mary, peace be upon her, with exceptional qualities, as Dr. Rodriguez mentioned some of them, and Sister Asel also. Lady Mary is portrayed as a superior and exalted figure, chosen, pure, and distinguished. Ultimately, Allah presents Lady Mary as the role model for all believers. The Quran refers to Maryam, the daughter of Imran, as an example for both men and women due to her unique characteristics. It is worth to mention that Jesus was born and raised solely by a woman. Can you imagine? The Holy Prophet is born and even raised by a mother, by a lady, by a pure lady. The other woman is Lady Asiya, wife of Pharaoh, during the time of Prophet Moses. She became the symbol of resistance against tyranny and oppression as she stood against the most powerful emperor of that time. She stood up for the poor and the oppressed and gave up her life while trying to save these people. Holy Quran does not imply that Pharaoh's wife was merely a role model for good woman. Rather, she deserved as an example for all righteous people. Additionally, it is significant that Prophet Moses was also raised by a virtuous woman, and her role and the Lady Asiya role in the life of the Prophet Moses and his upbringing was immensely influential. In conclusion, women can serve as role models for both men and women. From a religious and Quranic perspective, both Lady Mary and Asiya exemplify ideal figures to be followed. Second group, highlighting a woman's righteous action in religious practices. One of the religious obligations that every Muslim must fulfill during lifetime is performing Hajj. One of the fundamental pillars of a religious, political, social, and cultural movement in Islam is inspired by the effort of a woman, the action of Hajar, like those of Prophet Ibrahim from the foundation of Hajj. The sacred rituals of Hajj have ensured that both men and women enjoy equal rights considering their human and gender-related aspects fairly. Among the rites of Hajj, there is a ritual derived from the action of Hajar before the appearance of the Zamzam well between the hills of Safa and Marwa. This is a good honor for women, as the effort of a woman has become one of the essential pillars of the largest religious gathering in Islam. It shows that Islam is a religion that holds women in high regard. Another obligatory act in Hajj is Tawaf Nisa, circumambulation of women. This ritual further emphasizes the significance of women's Islamic rights, and this action is obligatory for men and women both during the Hajj ceremony. And for the third group, which statements or action by prophet or imams in a specific context, I should mention that the pre-Islamic culture of the Arabs of that era was clearly patriarchal. In that context, our prophet strove to grant dignity to women and ensure that their rights were upheld. One famous hadith states, "The best of you are those who are best to their women." And the Prophet Muhammad stated in a widely narrated hadith, the chosen women of paradise are four: Lady Khadija, the wife of the Prophet; Lady Fatima, the daughter of Prophet Muhammad; Lady Mary, the daughter of Imran; and Asiya, the wife of Pharaoh. Now, some qualities of these women, I just mentioned you mentioned the Lady Khadija, the wife of the Holy Prophet. She was the first woman to believe in Prophet. Historical reports highlight her high social status and esteemed reputation, and describe her as the best and most trustful advisor, minister, and source of comfort for the Prophet. Beyond her financial support for Islam and the Prophet, she actively defined him in times of danger and stood by his side in various critical situations, which today is the anniversary of her death. And another lady is Hazrat Fatima, Lady Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet, who also was recognized as an independent social and religious figure. She played an influential role in both in the family and society. And she was a perfect balance, exemplified a perfect balance between familial responsibility and social duties, as Sister Astel mentioned. And we have another lady, Lady Zainab, who the Ashura movement did not conclude with the martyrdom of the Imam Hussein. Rather, its guidance and leadership fell into the capable hands of a lady, which is Lady Zainab. Thus, we will see that all the women recognized as role models in Shia thought are not only of high spiritual stature, but also active participants in society. In many instances, they showed strength and prominence, surpassing their male contemporaries. They bear the responsibilities of both men and women. Some even played a crucial role in nurturing future generations of prophets and divine leaders.
Thank you
Thank
so
you. I
much.
think I proceed from my time. Sorry.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that beautiful reflection. And we'll turn now to Sister Anne, maybe in 3 or 4 minutes, Sister Anne. So we ask you to reflect on examples, either stories or people who represent in the Christian tradition the dignity of men and women, and you can speak about whomever you want, but we know that you're, among other things, you're an expert in the lives of the saints. You've already mentioned Edith Stein earlier, and I know there are many great female saints. So perhaps you'll give us an example from that tradition, but please, if you could continue this reflection.
I would like to kind of begin by, in a way, echoing Dr. Seferina's comment on Mary at the Annunciation, right? So in our scriptures, the encounter of the angel with Mary is truly unique. There's really no conversation like that between a human and a heavenly being, right? That matches. The closest, I suppose, would be the conversation of Abraham, at the Oaks of Mamre, when he has the three visitors and then converses with the Lord. But Mary at the Annunciation, the angel appears to her. He greets her with a honorific title as full of grace, and she the simple young girl, can stand her ground and just ask some intelligent questions about, how this shall come, how this shall be, and the angel waits, to hear her freely given consent. So he honors her freedom, as as one full of grace, someone who was raised up to bear the Son of God, who will be the successor of David on the throne, a kingship that will last forever. And then Elizabeth greets her when she goes to visit her cousin and says, "Who am I that the mother of my Lord, should come to visit me?" And again, the beautiful conversation between Mary and Jesus at Cana, to which Dr. Cortez Rodriguez already referred. So beautiful, beautiful examples from the scriptures. Women also called to be the first to bear witness to the resurrection of Jesus. But I would like to then kind of talk about the saints, right? So, and I'll focus on examples where you have both men and women often sort of paired as sharing in a common mission. We think of the married saints, and our tradition does honor married saints. So, like, for instance, most recently, besides the ones in scripture, Elizabeth and Zachary, in the Proto-Evangelium of James, St. Anne and Joachim. I have to mention Anne because of my name. Anne and Joachim, the parents of the Blessed Virgin. Most recently, the Church has canonized the parents of Saint Therese of Lisieux, who brought together, who gave the church like a whole family of saints, in their children. Every Christian parents are meant to not only bring their children physically into the world, but to bring them to a rebirth, in the sacrament of baptism. And in that way, they give God children in that double and full sense of graced children. And then there's the foundresses and the founders of communities. So we think about the great Carmelite saints, Saint Therese of Avila, and who was a friend and sort of co-founder with Saint John of the Cross, both bringing a great movement of spirituality and a deep spirituality and reform into the Carmelite tradition. Francis and Clare, St. Francis of Assisi, Clare of Assisi, again, bringing a great movement together of renewal into the church. And earlier in the tradition, I think of, my students are very impressed with this story, that of Monica and Augustine, right? So you had St. Monica sort of giving birth to her son, Augustine, in a double sense, because of her many tears and prayers and sacrifices for his conversion. And then finally, Monica and Augustine standing side by side in the last weeks and months of her life, and having a common mystical experience that seems to have gone all the way up the chain of being, until they are somehow together in the presence of God. And she could say, well, my mission has been accomplished. I have done what my life was for, in bringing my son to baptism, to the faith, and giving the whole church, a great doctor. So those are the figures that came to mind readily. But of course, there are also Old Testament sort of prototypes, of the Virgin Mary, and they are celebrated in our liturgy. So it's beautiful to see how Mary has been a model, both for those who came before her, looking forward toward Mary, and then the many who have come after her, who claim her as our mother.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sister Anne. And your reflections remind us that there's another important holy day. There's lots of holy days going on during this time, because 2 weeks from today will be March 25th, and that is the Feast of the Annunciation, and which, of course, is a time where the Christian Church remembers the visit of the angel Gabriel to Mary, but of course, also when she says, let it be done according to your will, sometimes remembered as her fiat from the Latin, is the moment of the incarnation. So God entering into the human story in the womb of the Blessed Virgin Mary. So I was speaking with my students about that at the University of Notre Dame last week, and I was like, guys, when do you think the Feast of the Annunciation is? And it took a while to get there. I was like, what? Someone said, it's connected to Christmas, Christmas, December 25th. When do you think Annunciation is? And we finally got to March 25th. So Dr. Cortez Rodriguez, please, if you could continue the reflection on characters or stories which in the Christian tradition reflect the dignity of men and women.
I was thinking about this question, and I'm happily surprised and thankful for the question, because we have the tendency to think that the history of the church has been dominated by men. However, we see throughout the history of the tradition how women have been involved in different ways in the life and in the life and the sharing of the gospel. So the beginning of the church for first early Christians, it was not easy. The environment was let's say something like very violent and aggressive toward different religions. It was the Christian Roman Empire. The Roman Empire, Greek Roman Empire, and not Christian yet. So the first 3 centuries, probably 2 to 3 centuries of Christianity, were very much a time where the church started establishing the beliefs, the church, the rituals, and so on. But at the same time, it's a time when the church, or Christians at that time, were persecuted. And they are martyrs that offered their lives in the name of Jesus. So Christians were required to perform certain duties to the Greco-Roman gods. And when they were not doing that, they were imprisoned or they were assassinated. So we have the case, for instance, of Perpetua and Felicity, 2 women that one of them is known as just giving birth when she is imprisoned and is killed. So we believe that they were mothers. They were devoting also the life to the community and to the message of Jesus. and they were capable of offering their lives. So as them, there are many others at that time, also men that offered their lives in order to announce Jesus and to be faithful to their faith. So when we think about women being role models, then we are fortunate to have those cases as well. Sister Anne mentioned Catherine of Siena too, how she was a very powerful woman also that managed to advise bishops and seminarians and so on. So here there have been sometimes some the formers of certain seminaries, they have been surprised to see me as a professor in the university educating the seminarians. So now I will remember to tell them, like, remember Catherine of Siena, because she was advising also church leaders at that time in order to keep them faithful. And in Chile, you may not have heard about her, but in Chile we have Saint Teresa of the Andes, Santa Teresa de los Andes. She's a saint. She was proclaimed as a saint by Pope Paul VI, and she is known because she was an upper class girl that devoted. Okay, I have to tell this. She had a very difficult temperament. So she was a difficult person. However, she decided to go into the Carmelites. And it is said that when she entered the Carmelites, then she became a nun, and she was much more measured and devoted her life, her short life, because she passed away very young, to Jesus and to praying and to be a pious woman. Today, she is visited by many people throughout the year. There is a temple devoted to her, Santa Teresa de los Andes. It is located in a city very close to Santiago. So many people from Santiago goes there. And during the spring, there is a moment when especially youngsters go and walk from very late or early in the night. Maybe they woke up at 3 a.m. If they woke up, maybe they continue the night, and then they keep walking, and they have a pilgrimage to her temple, where they celebrate Mass, and they have, it's a very joyful experience. And I have to say that many youngsters go there, and it's a celebration where everyone remembers and goes back to Saint Teresa's life as a person who devoted her life being a Chilean, a young person, upper class girl who decided to live in a different way and to devote her life to Jesus. So we have also our local saint. So I wanted to share with you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cortez Rodriguez. So you gave us visions of strong women and saintly women from the medieval period with Catherine, and then from the 20th century, and from the great country of Chile. And so we're going to move on to our third question, which brings us more to the contemporary world. And we'll begin again with you, Dr. Safarinia. And I'd like to ask you about, what are, within the question of gender, what are ways that Catholics, so Catholic Christians and Shia Muslims together can promote gender rights? What are some particular topics today in 2025 that Shia and Catholics can work on together to address the future of gender rights in a way that brings forth their religious values.
Thank you. Actually, there are some extremist movements that, under various names, try to deny femininity and its honorable, impactful roles. They promote the idea of women simply copying men, or a form of replication of women from men, in the name of equality. In contrast, the thoughtful followers of the Abrahamic religions are deeply concerned with ensuring women's rights. At the same time, they strive to preserve the unique identity and dignity of womanhood. Based on this shared concern, it is natural for Muslim and Christian thinkers to expand dialogue, collaborations, and joint activities on specific issues. Part of these efforts could involve joint research and co-publications in the form of books or even articles. Some initiatives could focus on developing actionable strategies on gender and women's rights for presentation in international forums. Certainly, the continuation of such dialogues is essential for a better understanding of one another and for strengthening commonalities. Regarding the topics that can serve as the focus of joint activities in research, educational activities, development of international projects, actually there is an extensive list that can be proceeded. But for now, I will mention only 3 points. I emphasize that the followers of religions, in addition to striving to strengthen their commonalities, must always be concerned with addressing the problems of humanity as a whole. They should critically and intellectually evaluate perspectives or behaviors that harm humanity and violate human dignity. And my 3 suggested topics. First, justice holds a highly esteemed position in Islam. The prophets, the holy prophets, were sent to establish justice. This actually raises an important question. What is the relationship between justice and gender? Where does gender justice fit within the broader project of comprehensive justice across all domains? How do Islam and Christianity approach justice in political, social, and family spheres? Within this framework of justice, where does equality exist? In which areas positive discrimination should favor women? Another second topics can be the notion of gender, the concept and function of family and their interrelation. It is essential to discuss the relation between gender and the concept of family. When we talk about gender, what is its relationship with the concept of family? How do they connect? What is the role and the status of motherhood? Are the ideas currently promoted in international forums aligned with religious teachings, or do they diverge? If the true essence of family is weakened, what remains of human civilization? Can we, in the name of freedom, destroy or harm fundamental human values that actually enhance freedom? To properly understand gender, individual identity, and family rights, we must examine how they are interlinked. In today's world, some argue that defending individual identity requires opposing the family structure. They claim that personal identity cannot coexist with family belonging. And what is the religious perspective on this matter? Does it emphasize the simultaneous preservation of both individual identity and collective family identity. Some say that in order to defend the family, it is permissible to violate the individual rights of its members. Is this the approach approved by religion or not? Another topic is that the extraction of common principles between religions in the area of gender. The shared moral principle of religions regarding gender should be identified. In fact, the main question here would be, what are the ethical principles regarding gender in the individual, family, and social spheres from the perspective of the Abrahamic religions, especially Christianity and Shia Islam? And how can these ethical standards be implemented correctly? Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Safarenia. Sister Anne.
I'm very fortunate to be able to follow Dr. Safarina because you've given us a great lead. Years ago, I was privileged also to be in an interreligious dialogue group, and one of the things that really impressed me was the ethos of charity to the poor that is Islam, and that so we gravitated quite quickly to that, that is strong in both of our traditions, but we were also sort of challenged, right, to think about like what are the boundaries, of our service to the poor and our work for justice, so that a watchword for me has always been the example of Mother Teresa, who said that the criterion for help given to another should be need, not creed. That a person of whatever faith, whatever background, if they need food, shelter, clothing, they should be cared for. And secondly, I would like to echo what Dr. Safarina said about the family life. Years ago, Pope John Paul II wrote an encyclical about work and economy. And he said that why is it that the work days are structured the way they are, so that a mother can't work in the middle part of the day, have a job in the middle of the part of the day when her children are in school. But instead she's asked to work, during the very hours when her children need her at home, to feed them, to get them off to school. There could be some real changes in just the work day, the way it's structured, to allow women to also make a contribution to society while maintaining, the primary vocation, right, to their own children and their family life. To see the importance of family life, and that there is really no substitute for the love that is between children and parents and brothers and sisters, the primary social unit. It needs to be preserved and protected. And we see many secular forces that are opposed to that really seem to be almost aimed, at the destruction of family life. I'm not sure, but I would hope, that Christians and Muslims can join forces, for the protection of the unborn, for human life at its most vulnerable stages, at the beginning and at the end of life, and also in opposition to human trafficking, where there would be human beings treated as slaves to be bought and sold, and which seems such a fundamental assault on human dignity. And then one other thing that occurred to me, which I am very, it bothers me quite a bit, is the secular influence on the clothing of women. And I know there are Christian fashion designers, right, who are trying to make a difference in the fashion industry. And I know too that Muslim women are also involved in this, that there's nothing more beautiful than a modest dress, for a woman. If, that would be something that would be a really good common project, because it enhances the dignity of a woman, to be dressed modestly, if I may say so. So those are things that came to the top of my head.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sister. And Dr. Cortez Rodriguez, I'd like to invite you to continue the conversation about issues about the promotion of men and women that Muslims and Christians, maybe Shia and Catholics in particular, can advance together. I'd like to raise one possible subject for reflection, and if you prefer to go in a different direction, that's fine as well. But at our university, I'm not sure in Santiago if it's the same, or Dr. Safarenia if it's the same for you in Iran, but we see our students walking around campus, outside between classes, or going to the residence or to the dining hall, and they're looking down at their phones, walking around. I mean, literally. I think probably there's more students doing that than students who are just walking without looking at their phone. So, I mean, it's a real dramatic, almost a revolution in the way of being a human. But I think also when we think of the content that young men and women are engaging with on social media, there are questions there as well, maybe particularly for women. So I'd like to invite you, if you want to reflect on, what does it mean to, or how can Catholics and Shia engage with this new world, with social media and all of its consequences, or simply continue the conversation on common issues around this topic.
Well, Dr. Reynolds, your question fits very well with one of the points I wanted to address, and it has to do with education. If we think about challenges that women still face during these times, I think education is one of them. In terms of, I'm thinking about my students in my classes. I have had many times first generation of women getting educated in a college. So that brings me hope that there are women moving into another different and probably better life. I had an experience with a girl that I have a class that is with service learning methodology. So we usually go during the semester to a parish, and there we met a parish girl in a very modest area of Santiago. And it was a beautiful surprise 2 years later to see her being one of my students there in the class and going to the parish as an ambassador, because she knew the place, she knew everyone, and that she was being the first person to get education in the university. So those kind of cases made me think about how important it is to keep doing what we do, educating others, and then reflecting upon the possibilities, but also how Christian values and Muslim values allow us to make people live the best life they can have. hopefully everyone could have that. And in terms of education, I think about the nuns too. Not all congregations are promoting theological education. So some congregations are more devoted to health care, for instance. So they promote among their nuns education in that area. But I think that having more nuns prepared in theological reflection, understanding, will equip them with tools to be in the world we are facing now, which is a world with instant information. So we can be teaching, I don't know if you have experienced it, but you can be teaching and tell something, and then students go immediately to find if what you are saying is correct. And sometimes it happened that I have been telling something, and then I am wondering whether it was at that time or that time, and then suddenly someone comes with the answer. No, Professor, it was at that time. Oh, thank you. That is a more natural and interesting way, but information is immediately, it's in their hands, in our hands. So I think that is a time when we have to teach, well, facts, of course, but also we have to lead students or people surrounding us to reflect, to have other skills, soft skills, global skills, being kind, being attentive, be respectful. I mean, there are many values that we have in the core of our religions that can be shared. And I think that, and they are not searchable on Google. Google is not going to answer that. You can find the facts on Google, but then to have what the women we have been talking of, or to be kind, to have families that have equal relationship and respectful relationships among their members, then that is something that they are not going to be able to Google, because that's something that we are meant to teach. So the last point I wanted to share was working against gender-based violence, which is something that also Sister Anne mentioned, and it's, I think, unfortunately, is a shared challenge for all of us, like to keep working on against gender-based violence. So thank you. That is what I am going to say.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, so challenges, areas of hope. You bring us hope, but also real challenges. I mean, the issue of gender-based violence, which is so often a hidden crime in many cultures. It's just a hidden crime that women suffer from just disproportionately. Dr. Safarenia, one last question for you. As you must know, as a scholar who engages with the world from Iran, oftentimes certain Islamic societies are seen as being sort of universally discriminatory against women. Sometimes this is accused of Iran or Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, other Muslim majority countries. Could you speak to this? Why do you think there is this sort of universal idea about these countries, and how do you respond to these ideas?
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez, Dr. Rhino. What you mentioned about the students is the main concern in my country as well. I benefited from the do you have my voice? Yeah.
Yes,
I benefited from the solutions of Dr. Rodriguez, but I want to say that it became a disaster when you are standing in front of the boards and trying to teach with full energy and using all the teaching methods, but you figure out that the head of the students are inside the cell phones, and then, wow, it's terrible. Okay, concerning, back to your question, it's my main challenge these days. Okay, concerning your question, there are three essential points to consider here. First, it is crucial to examine the criteria upon which public perceptions and judgments are based. The way one perceives a phenomenon depends on the lens through which it is viewed, leading to different interpretation and evaluations. When media outlets or certain groups driven by negative intentions or political or cultural agendas continuously spread false narratives against a particular culture or religion or country, the outcome is predictable, and theoretical discussions alone will not correct their approach. For those who are open to being influenced by facts and shaping their perspectives based on reality, it is necessary to ensure that they judge matters based on valid criteria. Are the standards or evaluating events derived from values or legal principles accepted across different cultures? Do these evaluation criteria have rational foundations, meaning that any reasonable observer would confirm their validity? At times, we hear that a particular culture or politician in certain places consider themselves the universal standards and claims to set the benchmark for the world. But should we define our criteria for judgment based on this perspective? If so, the path taken has been flawed from the very beginning, I believe. If we expect religious societies to distance themselves from their cultural foundations and align with the views of others, this would be unjust and should be actually rejected, as it is an attempt at assimilation. According to the international human rights system, cultural diversity, while respecting universal values, is acceptable. The second point to be considered is that in every case, adherence to evidence and reliable sources is essential. We must be aware that anything said without valid evidence and documentation holds no value and should not be judged upon. In this process, institutions that play a role in strengthening commonalities, such as the host of the current session, can present any example that is brought up with a negative connotation to the other party for verification of evidence and facts. The third point is that we must make efforts to convey correct criteria for judgment to the public and teach them how to identify valid evidence from invalid ones. We should allow them and respect their ability to judge based on accepted criteria such as humane, moral, and legal values, which are acknowledged by various cultures, as well as universal standards. Based on such judgment, if it is pointed out that a particular Islamic or non-Islamic country is violating human rights in a certain area or violate women's rights, we should all take a united stance against the violators, so they are compelled to correct their wrong actions. It does not matter whether the violator of rights is the Taliban in Afghanistan, the Zionists in Gaza, or the authorities of some countries. We must consider that, according to the shared teachings of all religions, no government, no group, no individual is free to act as they wish, whether regarding women or other rights. both Islamic and non-Islamic countries are obligated to uphold human standards. I believe that a correct interpretation of religion has the full capacity to eliminate injustices, and for this reason, I firmly reject the interpretation of religion presented by, for example, Taliban, as I consider it to be against women's rights and harmful to Islam and Muslims. If such an interpretation is recommended in my own country, I will oppose it, as I believe this kind of interpretation, or the interpretation of violent and human groups who falsely present themselves as Muslims, are completely wrong. First and most foremost, Muslims must take a strong stance against them, as these groups, with their incorrect views and horrific actions, not only violate human rights, but also damage the image of Islam in the eyes of the world. Therefore, the third point is that all of us must be sensitive to violations of human rights and do our part to constructively help create an environment for reform and the alleviation of existing suffering.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, Dr. Safariniya. I have a brief thought to add in a moment, but let me say first, we have about 6 minutes. So if there's someone attending the session who would like to ask a question, you can do that in the Q&A, and that'll be visible to us. So short questions and then short answers. Dr. Safariniya, in your reflection behind your bringing together of religious values, but also universal human rights, one can see the methodology that is generally true in Islam and Christianity, but I think especially in the Shia tradition, where one looks both to Quran, Hadith, Imams, but also to reason, that God has given us reason, and we can see reason as a real resource for religious thinking. This is very important in Catholic tradition as well, something shared with Catholic tradition. So Sister Anne and Rocio, maybe as a final question, building on what Dr. Safariniya has shared with us, this is a challenge in thinking about gender for Catholic theologians. On the one hand, we have our stories and our texts, we have our church, which guides us, but then we also observe the world. So there's a lot of new insights about psychology of men and women, about the way that societies and family units work, what it means to flourish or be well. Could you speak about any of that? I don't know, either of you can begin if you feel eager. How do Catholics today engage with this data, psychology, sociology of the social sciences? Maybe we'll start with you, Sister Anne, if you'd like, and then we could turn to Rocio, very briefly.
Yeah, I don't know if I can really answer the question as you have posed it, Gabriel, but I would like to pick up on something that Dr. Safariniya had to say, and that is that the situation for the Catholic Church, in our society in the West, is also, I think we'd have to say, increasingly a minority position, right? In a world where even the women's movement has kind of taken on a different face, that is at odds in many ways with our own religious tradition, and so there's always the difficulty, I think, for all people of our traditions, our religious traditions, is that we are often in a position where the world around us has kind of taken up, bits and fragments, of our tradition, and turned it into something else that is actually, and often we experience it as being anti-Christian, so I'm thinking of certain forms of secular feminism that even deny the existence of woman, or the pro-choice feminism, which is opposed to the church's teaching on the dignity of human life, and the anti-motherhood streams, even the anti-Mary streams, that have been advanced by a secular feminist. So we have to hold our ground, but also kind of build up on what are the common roots.
Thank you. And then a thought, maybe, Dr. Rocio.
Yes, thank you, Sister Anne, for going first, because that allowed me to think about, and I was also having in mind how women from Christianity and from the Catholic Church entered the feminist movement, offering new insights and taking certain distance from certain values and speeches that were part of the initial movement in within women. And I think that if we think about psychology, sociology, and how they have helped us to think about our humanity, I think that they have helped, those sciences are helping us to understand the differences we have and to consider the value that it has to be different. Here, in the development of Catholic theology, in light of the women movement, I see that the 2 generations ago, that started to be in the theological field, we see that they are very tough women, because it was understood that in order to be accepted by the male colleagues, you had to be a little bit more, tough, serious, and to have certain attitude that make you feel or appear as an equal to men. They were different strategies, and for different times probably. And also, first women talking about theology were most of the time being related only to talk about gender or feminist theologies. Now we have a bunch of women speaking about different fields of theology, which match the theological reflection. And in that way, psychology, sociology, anthropology, and other sciences help us to understand maybe the differences we have, but how we can nourish, we can improve places where we are, but being what we are, from our perspectives, way of being, and the beauty that each of us has in their own way of being.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Beautiful reflection. Thank you. And of course, all of you represent the diversity of theological fields in your own research. We're very grateful to have you together here, and really appreciate the way in which our conversations in this series, sponsored by the Ansari Institute, and I'll turn to Mahan in just a second to give a final note, but how both the distinctive traditions are represented. They're not the same. Islam is Islam, Christianity is Christianity, but then universal common ground is found. So Dr. Mirza, do you have a final word for us before we say goodbye? Maybe also announcing the next and final session.
Sure. Well, thank you, Professor Gabriel, and to our distinguished panel. Great to be with Anne again. We've been trying to connect forever, but really, Dr. Safrina, thank you also, and obviously Rocio from Chile, Qom, Tehran, and here at Notre Dame. Banafsheh had to fly. She was grounded because of heavy winds and wasn't able to be where she wanted to be for the dialogue, and then her plane took off. But we're grateful to her for really leading the implementation of this. I'd also like to thank the gallery. We have some very distinguished scholars who joined us to witness this interaction. We were not able to interact with them, but I'd like to invite them, to share feedback offline. There will be a report afterwards on these dialogues, and we'd be happy to incorporate some of their observations. There were a number of interesting topics. I'm not going to, try to summarize, but I've just a couple of things, the conditional versus the intrinsic dignity. This seems to be at the heart of a conversation that needs to be developed, because it has such wide-ranging implications for how we view our collective existence as a human family. And then the question of the specialization and division of labor between the genders. This is very interesting. It's definitely traditionally rooted in both traditions, but highly contested again, because of the question of the difference, and that it can impact equality, which brings us to the tensions with contemporary movements of justice versus the faith-based approaches to dignity. And I think that those are some areas where we can continue to think more carefully together. The most important thing is that we need to talk to each other. When we have barriers and we don't see each other, we can build up images of each other, and the drumbeats of war can be heard, and we need to avoid that. And that happens through contact, through collaboration, through shared publications, many of the things that were suggested. So I want to just thank all of you once again for participating in this. Our next dialogue will be on the topic of geopolitics in April. So stay tuned for that. We will share the dates and send out emails as we have done before. Thank you. I think that's it. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, friends.
Nice to meet you. Bye-bye. Nice to see you
Bye-bye.
all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.